Since he swaggered onto the political stage nearly a decade ago, Donald Trump has taken trash talking to new heights. And now he's taking out the trash.
How do you like my garbage truck? This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden.
Appearing in Wisconsin, he was drawing attention to a Joe Biden gaffe when he appeared to refer to Trump supporters as garbage. Despite Biden trying to clarify and Kamala Harris distancing, Trump loves an opportunity. The former president is swinging through the swing states, trying to get as much visibility as possible.
I want to protect the women of our country, they said. They said, sir, I just think it's inappropriate for you to say, pay these guys a lot of money. Can you believe it? I said, well, I'm going to do it whether the women like it or not.
Good morning. Good morning. Happy Halloween.
Kamala Harris, also campaigning in Wisconsin, seized on that remark this morning.
It actually is, I think, very offensive to women in terms of not understanding their agency, their authority, their right, and their ability to make decisions about their own lives, including their own bodies.
Yet as Harris focuses on what she thinks are vote-winning issues like women's rights, some in the crowd are reminding her of a weak spot.
Hey, you know what?
The war
Listen,
in Gaza.
We all want the war in Gaza to end and get the hostages out as soon as possible.
She'll also be hoping Biden doesn't give her any more Halloween tricks. Accompanied by the First Lady dressed as a panda, the current White House occupant is keeping quiet for now, although playfully biting the leg of a child dressed as a chicken isn't necessarily the greatest of optics.
Here's your ballot. Once you're finished completing the ballot, you'll put it inside this yellow secrecy envelope.
And it matters because people are already voting. More than 50 million have cast their ballots early, either in person or by mail. And as the ballots come in, so do the lawsuits, with false claims from the Trump campaign that non-Americans are voting, and videos being shared online with baseless accusations of voter suppression. A warning sign of what might be to come this time next week. Some relief from politics for Americans last night. Baseball fans erupt as the LA Dodgers win the World Series. Parties on the streets of the City of Angels. Democrats or Republicans will soon experience all this, as many simply pray that it all passes quickly and peacefully.
Now, if any voters are still undecided, they've got just 5 days to make up their minds. And with Kamala Harris and Donald Trump trying to fire up their core supporters, there hasn't been much focus on the dwindling center ground. Winning the White House isn't about getting the most votes. The Electoral College is what matters. Victory goes to whoever wins a majority of the 538 votes. And the magic number to reach is 270. The number of electors given to each state is based on their congressional districts plus their 2 senators. So, California, for instance, with the highest population, just under 40 million people, gets 54 electoral college votes. The 6 states with the smallest populations, along with the District of Columbia, get the minimum 3 electoral votes. Most states have a winner-takes-all system for their electors, and the campaign is fought most fiercely in 7 key swing states whose support is in the balance. One of the most fought-over states is Georgia, which Joe Biden won by only 11,779 votes in 2020. It has 16 crucial electoral college votes up for grabs. Okay, well, with me now is Republican strategist Eric Tannenblatt and Dr. Jasmine Clark, who's a Democrat and a Georgia state representative. Welcome to you both. Now, the last few days have really been dominated by this extraordinary sort of tit-for-tat on gaffes and who can be more insulting, right? So let's start with you, Eric. It all started on Sunday in Madison Square Garden when a comedian insulted Puerto Ricans, and then it's got kind of worse since then. How does this sort of stuff move the needle? Because it sounds really silly, frankly.
Well, things like this happen all the time at the very end of a campaign. And right now we're down to the wire, and there's a very small group of people that are still undecided. So the Harris supporters and the Trump supporters, they're locked in. And so now every little thing they try to use to try and, turn some of these undecided voters into supporters.
So how damaging was the Puerto Rican stuff for Republicans? How damaging was that line from Trump, I think yesterday, when he said, I'm going to protect women whether they like it or not?
Well, I think in certain communities, it's very damaging. Like in Pennsylvania, which is one of the swing states, there's over 500,000 Puerto Rican citizens. And, those people vote.
Could that have lost him the election?
I don't know that it will lose him the election, but I'm sure that there's an effort on the part of the Harris campaign to try and make sure that everyone is aware of those comments, because I'm sure they don't sit well with those people. And look, we have Puerto Rican Georgians, and there are Puerto Ricans all across the country. So I think in that regard, that could have a...
And they're proud to be Puerto Rican, and they were upset.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to let you get away with it, Jasmine, because, of course, then, as she gave us, Kamala Harris gave her extremely, sort of poignant speech about the future of the Republic in front of the White House in the Ellipse in Washington the other day. Guess what everyone was talking about? It was President Biden's supposed gaffe that, the garbage are the supporters of Donald Trump. And there was this whole argument whether he meant supporter, as in the comedian, or supporters. That did overshadow her campaign, didn't it?
I don't know if I would say it overshadowed her campaign, but I do think that we have to be very careful with our words, especially when we get to this point in the campaign. Either way, it's giving me the deplorable vibes of the Hillary Clinton campaign back in 2016.
Right. And, I mean, still, the fact that the president said those things, it gave the Republicans something to talk about. It changed the conversation for them. It's not helpful, is it?
Well, yeah, of course. When we get to this point in the campaign, you want people to be talking about the good things that you're saying, and you don't want to shift away when your opponent says something horrible, or one of their supporters, with one single supporter, just to be clear, one of their supporters says something that you don't like.
It's also, frankly, childish playground stuff. We should be talking about policies and the most important democracy on the planet.
Right, and the unfortunate thing for Vice President Harris is she delivered her closing remarks on the Ellipse, trying to, contrast herself from former President Trump, and the next day, the comment by President Biden sort of drowned that out, so people weren't talking about what Vice President Harris said. But I do think it was just a gaffe on the part of President Biden. I don't think it's the same as something that's coming from President Trump or Vice President Harris. They're the two candidates. They're the two nominees.
I mean, when I watch the coverage of American elections, it's a bit like that with us as well. It's sometimes like a sports event. Who's up, who's down? What are the daily kind of, notches on either side? What's interesting this time is the number of people who voted early. It's an astonishing 60 million Americans. That's almost half the electorate, likely electorate. Yeah. Is that good for the Democrats, or is it good for the Republicans? First to you, Jasmine.
We're excited. I will just say that whenever we have high turnout, that is always a good sign for the Democratic Party and for the Democratic candidate. And that's how it's always felt. Right. Now, when it comes to the popular vote, I think we've got that in the bag already. So I think we're got to do some electoral college math on this. But I do think that this high turnout is a good sign for Democrats.
Would you agree with that, Eric?
Yeah, I do think high turnout is good because it means more people are engaged.
But is it good for the Democrats or the Republicans?
Well, it's hard to tell, because President Trump in the last election dissuaded his supporters from voting early and said vote on election day. This time he's encouraged them to vote early. So we don't know if the early voters for Republicans, for President Trump, are just voters that would have otherwise voted on election day.
And this is really important in the state of Georgia, because this is the state famously where Trump and 18 other defendants faced trial for having to, for trying to steal, allegedly steal the election in 2020. What's in it for Trump, people voting early?
Well, you bank your vote. I mean, right now the two campaigns are going out trying to energize their base. And in the case of the Trump campaign, his strategy has been going after his base and going after low propensity voters that are sort of that MAGA ilk. And so by banking those voters, it's less of those people they have to go after, and they could focus their attention on those low propensity voters to get them out to the polls.
We haven't got much time left, and this is a big question, but I want to ask it anyway. Democrats have described Trump as a fascist and a Nazi. Is he?
Well, I mean, as far as is he a Nazi?
No.
Probably not.
Right.
We are not in Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
But does his campaign have the rhetoric of Nazi Germany? And does he seem to cozy up to fascism, I would say yes.
You used to work with Mitt Romney, who's been very critical of the former president's character. What's your response to that accusation?
Well, look, I mean, there's a division in the Republican Party. And the Republican Party today is very different than the Republican Party when Mitt Romney was the nominee of the party back in 2012. Right now, the base of the Republican Party is the MAGA is the MAGA wing. It's Donald Trump. Donald Trump's the titular head of the party now, so there are going to be people in the party that have a different opinion.
Eric Tannenblatt, Jasmine Clark, thank you very much to both of you. Well, in another battleground state, Arizona, polls give Donald Trump the slimmest wafer of leads. The race is so tight that both candidates are in Phoenix today in a final push for votes. Kamala Harris needs to win over moderate Republicans if she wants to seize the momentum, including suburban women who she's been busy courting during this entire campaign. So, are they likely to shift her way? Our Washington correspondent, Siobhan Kennedy, has been to Arizona to find out.
In this election, just like 2020, suburban women are in the spotlight. And in the affluent outskirts of cities like Phoenix in Arizona, it's Republican women in particular who are huddling together, agonizing over iced tea. And the big question, should they vote with their conscience and ditch Donald Trump or stay loyal to their party?
I cannot vote for Trump. I will be voting for Kamala Harris.
I will not be voting for Donald Trump, but I haven't decided to vote for Harris.
I'm joyfully, genuinely excited to vote for Kamala Harris.
I will not vote for Trump again, and I'm undecided about Harris.
Remember, these are all Republican women, so you'd think the decision would be easy. And yet, you're not going to vote for Donald Trump.
Without a doubt, I will not vote for him. The circle next to his name will not get filled in. It's whether or not I don't vote at all, or if by election time I decide I'm going to vote for Harris or not.
But there's no way you're going back to Trump.
There's always a chance for him to meet Jesus, but I do not know if he will have that come to Jesus moment. I'm not there with the leap of faith to vote for Harris, but I feel okay. If you can't feel like you can't vote for Trump, you shouldn't. You just shouldn't vote for him this year.
You are two undecideds of Arizona.
You know, this is not the Republican Party that I grew up in.
It's incredible then that you could even have Kamala Harris on your lips, so driven away from Trump that you might consider.
Because you know what? He doesn't represent the Republican Party. He's not conservative. He's not stable. I feel like Kamala, you know, where I look and say, well, you know, it seems stable.
Stability, yes, but they're worried Harris won't deliver on the economy and immigration. Yet Trump's MAGA makeover of their party leaves them cold. And in Lisa's case, scared too. You don't feel safe?
I really don't.
Physically safe?
Yeah.
Why?
Because the level of vitriol and the level of emotion that these people that hold these seats with us have towards us for not supporting Trump, it's emotional and it's physical.
So Lisa was always voting Democrat this time as a protest against Trump. But then came the Trump-Harris head-on, and that sealed the deal.
But that debate...
Was it the debate that won you over?
That's what I saw, a Kamala Harris that I had never knew existed.
Sam saw that too, but she hasn't forgotten her roots.
I'm a lifelong Republican in small government and out of my bedroom.
Now she's so anti-Trump, Sam even agreed to introduce the vice president on a recent trip to Arizona.
I'm excited about Kamala Harris. I'm thrilled. You know, this idea of joy, you know, has now been replaced by hard work and policy. But underlying all of that is this very positive, very forward-looking message that I embrace.
And one message they all embrace this election is women's choice.
In the one place in America where women still have a right to choose.
That Harris is cleverly using to target Republican women just like them.
You can vote any way you want, and no one will ever know.
And in Arizona, choice is even more critical since protecting abortion rights is also on the ballot next week.
I trust women who are able and willing to make these decisions on their own.
I don't know anybody who's pro-abortion. I don't know anybody who's pro-abortion. And so then it's, is it choice or no choice?
Of course, the big choice, Trump or Harris, couldn't be more stark. And what's striking is the fear they all articulate about the future.
I don't see, well, really, I don't. I mean, I can't even imagine that former President Trump would be our president again.
End of days for you.
It's end of days for me.
Yeah, I'm petrified that it sounds a little extreme, but that we could be in a civil war of sorts.
So Lisa poses a question of her own.
So as an opportunity to the two of you who have not decided yet, if you do choose to undervote and not vote for Trump or Kamala, and Trump is elected, will you look back and regret the undervote?
I don't like either option, though I do have to say, I do actually think she's a decent human being. I really cannot say that about Donald Trump.
It is the hardest presidential race I'll be voting in, even though I find him so repulsive and can't vote for him. It's, will I go the other way?
Will she, can she vote for Kamala? If the answer to that question is yes, then Republican women here and across America could tip the balance in Harris's favor and send the first female president to the White House.